this might be the beginning of the end of the Iranian regime. About 4 days ago, we got reports of a major explosion in Iran, specifically in the port of Shahid Rajaee. Now, a port explosion on the surface doesn't sound like a geopolitical event of epic proportions, but in the case of that port and in the case of Iran, it's a whole different story. Allow me to explain. You see, Iran has a lot of issues with building its own internal transport system to exploit the oil they have. Unlike the Gulf neighbors of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, lots of mountains, lots of rough terrain, and even though they have a plateau in the center, it's very hard to transport, exploit, and take advantage of this oil like the Saudis and the UAE. That was the case well before the sanctions. That was also true in the time of the Shah. Now, basically, those resources are located in the part of Iran, the southwest part of Iran, where there's a lot of tensions, racial tensions, an Arab minority, lots of flooding, a lot of difficulties extracting, transporting oil in Iran, especially given the fact that Iran has a little straw through which it sends out and takes in goods. Port of Shahid Rajaee handles 80% of Iran's containers. About 60% of the entire cargo of Iran goes through this one port. There is no close second. The second and the third ports are tiny compared to this one. When it blew up, whether this was intentional or accidental, it paralyzed Iran's gateway to the world. And with a failing economy that's on the brink of collapse, that's a huge deal. That is why we keep hearing about reports that Iran is trying to block any news coming out about the explosion to the world, at least covering the extent of the damage to the world. Basically just the same as the USSR tried to prevent people from realizing how bad Chernobyl explosion really was in 1986. So right now, let's take a look about the problems here, right? Iran is now faced with this hard situation. They have a hard time exploiting oil, hard time selling oil, and now their only port basically to do so is compromised. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Now, when you take out the maritime hub of a country like Iran, you suffocate whatever's left of oxygen. And that's already an economy that's starving for oxygen. Now, to add on the difficulties of Iran as an economy, the sanctions are not helping. These sanctions basically killed any sort of foreign direct investments in Iran. They've killed the ability of Iran to actually make dollars from that oil. The only really customer that Iran has is China. And China is buying that oil on the cheap in a massive discount because there are a lot of other customers. The US isn't buying, Europeans are not buying. Basically, it's China at a massive discount. Now, here's the thing. What's going on right now in Iran is the same conditions that happened in 1979. The reason that the Shah lost the throne was the economy. It was the high inflation, it was the corruption, and it was the loss of confidence in the leadership. The economy sucked, and nobody had faith in the Shah, and the mob took to the street and brought him down. Right now, it's the same setup like we had in 1979. High inflation, high unemployment, lots of corruption, lots of dissent, lots of unhappy people, and loss of faith in the leadership. The conditions to bring down the regime have never been closer to 1979 than they are right now. And in this particular time, specifically now of all times, Iran loses its main maritime hub, its window to the world, its only way to make dollars, make foreign currency. Now, as a coincidence, it's a very, very strange coincidence that of all times this happens now, but nevertheless, it did happen. And that puts Iran in a huge, huge bind. Because at the end of the day, Iran is already struggling. The economy is already failing. The little ability they have to remain in power is compromised. And now, with this port going out of commission for God knows how long, this is a big problem. Now, I wouldn't pop the champagne just yet. You know, the US analysts over the years have made a career out of predicting the end of the IRGC and the Iranian regime. And even though it was entertaining, all of them for the past 45 years were wrong. These guys are resilient. And they have survived 45 years of this. Imagine going through 45 years of sanctions and this economy and still surviving. These guys are very resilient. But nevertheless, every system, no matter how resilient it is, it always has a breaking point. This one is no different, and we're getting close to it. We're getting very close to it. And right now, the problem is that Iran is in the midst of a very important negotiation with the United States. You may think that the end goal of Iran is to destroy the Israelis, or to take out the Saudis, or to destroy America. Or all of these things are empty propaganda. It's smoke and mirrors. They only care about their own survival. Using hatred for the Israelis or for America or for the Saudis, that's basically just smoke and mirrors to get people to go their way. Right now, they have a problem. They're running out of time. They're running out of oxygen. They know that the mobs will take to the streets. They have to figure this out. The problem is they have no friends left. The little friends that they do have are all either can't help or not good enough. Russia is a good friend to the Iranian regime, no doubt, but Russia is engulfed in its own trouble with the Ukraine war. They couldn't even help Bashar al-Assad. So Russia isn't going to be helping Iran anytime soon. They just don't have the resources and the bandwidth to help Iran right now. Now, China, on the other hand, well, they could help. They have the capacity to help, but China right now has been basically backed into a corner by the US regime. The US administration basically told the Chinese, hey, you want access to our markets? You got to pay. And you got to come to the table and play ball on the geopolitical stage based on our rules if you want us to bring down the tariffs. Make no mistake about it. The Chinese need the US market. Now is not a good time for China to piss off America. They're trying to cool the jets, not make America angrier. So China isn't going to help Iran right now at all. Sure, they'll keep buying cheap oil opportunistically and take advantage of Iran's predicament, but they're not going to come to bail out Iran because the beef with America right now needs to be settled, not made worse. And that leaves Iran with a huge problem. They're left with two options which are impossible. Really, a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they need to bail out and save the economy. That requires foreign investments. That requires money. That requires taking down the level of sanctions. That requires alleviation from America. That means that Iran has to come to the negotiation table and tell to Donald Trump and his administration, hey, we'll take a knee. We'll accept your demands. We'll take a knee. It's public humiliation for us, but we got to have some oxygen in this economy. The port just went out. We lost our leverage. Please bail us out. We'll do whatever you need. We'll say whatever you need. Just bail out the economy so people don't go to the streets and we're over. On the other hand, they can just say F you to America and let this thing kill them, which is going to be a very unpleasant death because at some point people will take to the streets. They're not going to live like this forever. If the economy is finally collapsing, which it seems to be happening, and the port going out is a huge catalyst to make it happen faster, well, they're going to be out in the guillotine quite soon. Essentially, they're dead. They're just left with a choice of how they want to die. Now, of course, this can take weeks or months or years. None of this happens overnight, but the fuse has been lit, folks. Now, of course, if you want to support this channel, it's not fully monetized because of the topics we discuss here. Patreon.com/TomNashReport. I post my actual articles there for you guys, so you're more than welcome to join, support the channel, read the articles. I'll see you next one. Peace.